All right, so you're the listing agent. You just received this interesting offer by email. You don't really understand it. What's your first instinct is to post it to lab coat agents. You're going to get a whole bunch of crazy different answers. Most of them say it's a scam, run away. They don't really understand it. And there are a few things you should know before you advise your clients. Let's go through it right now, talk about what it is, what it isn't, and the best course of action when it might make sense and when it does not for you to use to consider this offer. All right. So the first thing you need to do is educate your seller. Make sure they know what a sub-2 offer is. Make sure they know it's not an assumption, that those two things are different. If you need a primer, I just posted a video about that recently, a sub-2 versus an assumption. You can watch that. You can have them watch it. You need to go through the pros and cons of the sub-2 offer so that they understand if it makes sense to them or not. Second, consult with a licensed attorney in your state who really understands the law. Don't just go to a title company. Don't just go to the other agent who's done it before or your investor buddy. Make sure you go to an attorney and have that attorney consult your client directly so that they understand exactly what they're getting into. Number three, probably the most important one, evaluate the buyer's credibility. So when you are dealing with an investor, let's face it, there are some sketchy individuals in the investor space. And then there are some that are pretty legitimate, right? When you're dealing with a sub-2 offer, you need to be working with somebody who is of the utmost moral character. They have to be impeccable in their judgment. People make mistakes. They need to be able to recognize their responsibilities and go through with them. All right. This is not the type of person who's going to sit there and say, well, I'm a slumlord and they just live in my rental properties. That's not what you're looking for. You're not looking for somebody who's going to buy this property sub-2, take the rent, not make him payments, and then 6 months later run to Costa Rica, right? You got to make sure that they've got an existing business. This is not their only source of income. If this deal goes south, does their business blow up? You need to make sure that this is a small, meager percentage of their annual income so that they have a incentive to go through with the right decisions to make sure that they pay that note on time. Okay. One of the best things you can do is, of course, have you done this before? Let me see the HUD where you signed your name of your LLC to buy a property sub-2. Let me see what you're doing with that. Let me see the bank statements. Let me see that you've done this before and you know what you're doing. Let me talk to the attorney that you use on your deal so that I know that this is actually legitimate and that their attorney can vouch for you as well. If you can do those things, you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of whether this person's legitimate or not. If they're a wholesaler and they're looking to get this under contract and then wholesale it to somebody else, absolutely do not take that. Make sure that you write in any contract in there. This contract is not assignable. Okay. Do not let a sub-2 buyer assign their contract. Do not allow that. Okay. Why? Why do I say that? Because you don't know who you're dealing with. I just told you one of the most important things is to evaluate that buyer's credibility. And if they're going to assign it, you have no way to do that. So make sure you write in there, it's not assignable. Speaking of contracts, when you do that contract, there is no reason that they can't write it on your local MLS paperwork, right? So we're in the RAIN network here. The RAIN contracts work just fine for writing sub-2. You can just write all your terms in there, make it so that it is completely a legitimate offer, right? They don't need to use their investor only, I've got my great piece of paper. Make them do all the right forms. If they can't do it on the right forms, you got to ask them how legitimate they are, right? Another thing you need to do with your sellers is make sure you talk with them about the financial implications. What are the ramifications of doing a sub-2 deal? So the buyer is going to take over the payments. The loan is going to remain in the seller's name. They're going to remain liable for that loan in the event that the buyer doesn't pay. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that they need to go over. Make sure they understand that. And then imagine that they're a veteran with a VA loan. Make sure they understand what they're getting into, because if they sell a property with a VA loan and they sell it sub-2, they do not get their entitlement back. All right. There's nothing they can do. With an assumption, you can. There are some steps you take when you do an assumption that you get your entitlement back as the seller. Sub-2, that does not happen. So be very, very careful. Story time. I had a wholesaler contact me one time, said, hey, I got this great deal. It's up in Northern Virginia. It's a sub-2 deal. Here are the terms. It's a great moneymaker. I did a little bit of research. I look at it and I go, hey, this is a VA loan. So I start calling the guy. He won't answer, right? So I sent an email going, hey, here's my concerns. Well, guess what? When I lay out all the concerns about doing a sub-2 on a VA loan and the guy's entitlement. And hey, did you disclose to him? Let me see something in writing that says that he understands he is not getting his entitlement back. That dude ghosted me, right? Why did he ghost me? Because he knew he was wrong. Right? The dude was not of the utmost character. So where was that? So the problem was, first, that you had a guy who was trying to buy sub-2 that was not of the proper moral character. And two, he was a wholesaler. He's trying to assign it to somebody else. And you don't know who that person is. Of course, I did. And so I tried to reach out to the client. I never did actually find the client. I really hope that they never sold this for this guy. I mean, this guy was not somebody you want to do business with, right? The next thing your sellers need to be aware of when you're consulting them, hey, you got this offer, they need to be aware of the due on sale clause. Does the due on sale clause affect the seller? Actually, it doesn't. That's a problem for the buyer. The due on sale clause was an agreement between the owner number one, the seller, and the mortgage company when they made that first mortgage happen. They made an agreement that said, if I ever sell this property, I agree that I owe money to you and I'm going to pay off the note. It's not illegal. You're not going to get fined. You're not going to go to jail. It's a clause that they may, but don't have to invoke that says I can call the note due. Well, when you transfer title and leave the note here, you have done something where the due on sale clause could be invoked, right? As a seller, it's not really a problem, right? Because if it does get invoked, it's a problem for the buyer over here. Hey, guess what? They suddenly got to come up with $200,000, $300,000, whatever it is. And they got 30 days to do it. That's their problem. And if it doesn't, and they fail to do it, of course, you're going to say, hey, well, you failed to pay the loan. I'm going to go, foreclose on you. I'm going to take my property back, whatever the terms of your agreement were, right? But that due on sale clause, all it does is create a problem for the buyer. For the seller, it's not a big deal. And you just got to realize a lot of people make a big deal about that. It is not something where you're going to go to jail for selling it. You're not going to get fined. All that happens is that the bank would call the note. All right. That's all the due on sale clause is. The next thing I'm going to ask you is, people say that happens all the time. Well, it doesn't. If anybody says, hey, you got to watch for this, this happens, I go, okay, great. Name the person you know who that happened to. They probably can't. Do you know anybody who knows anybody? Well, maybe. They'll all say they know a guy who knows a guy. Sure. But nobody can actually put a name to it. I've heard of a guy who claims he knows somebody who knows somebody, right? Who said he heard of it once. And this is somebody who works in this space. And he couldn't even name it. He's like, I don't know. I don't know who did this. What? So apparently it can happen, the due on sale, where they can call the note, but it just doesn't happen very often. It's not a real concern. Now, as the seller could become a thorn in the side for the buyer, where they go, hey, sub-2, I've sold it. And then call the bank and go, hey, I just sold this thing. I think you should invoke the due on sale clause. There's nothing to stop the seller from doing that, right? He could do that, make it hard for the buyer. Absolutely could. That would be not ideal. But again, it's not a problem for the seller. It's only a problem for the buyer. All right. Next, for the seller, some folks will actually opt for an escrow service so that that buyer has to pay into an escrow service who's going to pay it instead of paying it directly. You can do that. They're going to take a fee. In the end, they still got to pay the money. I'm not sure the value to that. For seller financing, I can see that. For a sub-2, I don't really see the value to that. But that's me. Now, the most important thing when you're evaluating this offer is compare it to the other offers. So where is your seller in the process? We said we were going to talk about when it makes sense and when it does not. So if your seller is over a barrel and they got to close, and today's September 15th and they got to be out by October 1, or they're facing foreclosure, sub-2 might work, right? Because it can close fast, super fast. 2 weeks is not a problem for closing a sub-2 deal. Good luck closing a typical conventional loan. You won't do it. Maybe an investor with hard money, sure, they can do it. It's still going to take them 15 days, right? Sometimes. So it still takes some time to do a hard money loan. It still takes time to do a conventional loan, or hell, a VA, right? But if you're going to do a sub-2 or even a seller financing, they can be a lot quicker. So it depends where your sellers are. Are they over a barrel where they need to close today? Maybe this is an option. Or maybe they have so little equity that after everything has been taken out, all the commissions and fees and everything, closing costs, that they have to bring money to the table that they don't have. And now they're facing a short sale. Short sales take a long time, but they need to go for whatever reason. They go, hey, here's a sub-2 deal. I can walk away. When I've done a sub-2 deal in the past, I don't bring money to the table as the buyer. I just make it so that the seller can walk away from the deal. They can walk away from the house. They go, hey, this thing is an albatross around my neck. I can say, I can take that thing off your neck. I can make your life easier. Sign here, boom, I take over. And then I do my part and I fix it up and sell it, or I turn it into a rental, or whatever the case is. So it depends on your seller. What is their scenario? Are they in a situation where they have to do this? If they can accept a typical conventional loan, you probably want to do that. If they can accept a VA loan, you probably want to do that. When might you not? Well, let's say that conventional loan is at 450 and the Sub2 offers at 500. Maybe that's worth it to them to get the extra 50 grand if they just leave the note in their name for the next 20 years. I don't know. It's up to your seller. They just got to know what the pros and cons of that are. Figure it out. So comparing, the big picture is, this is an offer with certain price and terms. You got to compare it to the other offers with other price and terms and know what the pros and cons are. And if you are unsure, make sure you consult with an attorney local to, knows the laws of your state. I know what Virginia says. I've done them here in Virginia, and I can tell you that it is, if you're the right person, you can pull this off and you can make it beneficial to the seller. Both times I've done it, the sellers thank me. Matter of fact, I've had a seller that referred me another piece of business, and he's called me back to say, and then I sold him a house that he moved into, and I'm about to list his house for the third time. So bought his property from him, Sub2, and then did 3 more sides with him. Why is that? Why am I able to do that? Well, because it was such a value to him when I did that. So buying a property Sub2 is not a scam. It's not illegal. It's not something you should run away from. You should evaluate the terms, take a look at the price, present it to your seller logically, and let them decide if it makes sense to them. Always consult with an attorney if you have any questions. And by the way, of course, ask me any questions if you got it, because I've done it before. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. Caveat. Hey, so there is another option here that I completely forgot. I can't believe this, which is, if you're in such a situation where maybe Sub2 is something they're considering, before you do that, maybe you should have them contact their bank and go, I'm over the barrel. Maybe we can renegotiate the terms of my loan. Maybe they can. Maybe they can work something out. Maybe a short sale is a better option for them. Who knows what it is? But always consult with the bank just to find out, is there something better that I can do instead of just having somebody take over my note? All right, that's what we got. Talk to you later.